Hello, and welcome to another episode of Varsity360. I am Columbian sports editor Micah, joined today by Will Denner. And of course, this Monday, it's the first day of spring high school practice, which of course meant it was snowing earlier today.
Of course.
But I think it's fitting because winter evidently is not done, and neither are winter sports, not by a long shot, because we have the state basketball tournaments this week. We're coming to you from the First Pacific Financial Studio today early. And so we usually publish on Thursdays. This is coming out on Tuesdays because state basketball action starts Wednesday, and it should be a good 4 days of high quality hoops. Local teams looking to survive those Wednesday loser out games, and then Camas girls a favorite for the 4A state title. So before we get into all that, of course, we're coming to you from the First Pacific Financial Studio. Thank you to them for supporting the show, for supporting high school athletics, and by extension, supporting the community at large. But I think we'll start with the 2A boys, because the most exciting game from this past weekend's regional round was the Columbia River boys. Ari Richardson nails a three-pointer with a couple seconds left to deliver the Rapids a 55-52 win over White River in just a thrilling loser-out game. That move that he did to get himself some space, he kind of extended the arm just a little bit, but not enough for a foul, but just kind of say, I'm gonna make a moment here. Give me that space to make my moment. And then, of course, he drains it. The buzzer sounds. The Rapids fans are running off to kind of mob him under the other basket. You were there for all three games at Battleground this weekend. Just what was the energy in the gym like when that moment happened?
Yeah, but that was playoff basketball at its finest. There were several good games at Battleground this weekend, but obviously River kind of had that signature moment at the end, and great student turnout obviously from both River and Camas and Skyview all on Saturday, and props to Ari Richardson and the Rapids for delivering that moment. I mean, it's interesting to hear that that play wasn't even supposed to go to him, and then the White River kind of sniffs it out, and we've talked all season just about the great balance and kind of the ability for players like Aaron Hoey and Ari Richardson to play off of each other, and he's not even technically an option on that play, and then it goes to him, and he looks prepared for the moment and hits the biggest shot of his career so far, and sends the Rapids to Yakima. And
so what that means for Columbia River is they advance to Yakima, which, like you said, they're going to face number 5 Anacortes in a loser-out game at 7:15 p.m. Wednesday. The winner faces number 3 North Kitsap. But River, they're in the Hardwood Classic, being that they've made it to the final site for the first time since 2019. In Anacortes, they're going to face kind of an interesting team, and being, Anacortes, the number 3 seed from District 1. They lost to Cedar Crest in the semifinals of that district tournament, that had to win 3 straight loser-out games to reach state, including a revenge game against Cedar Crest in a winner-to-state game. They then lost in the regional round to Renton, setting up this round of 12 matchup. But for Columbia River, they got to be feeling good coming off that emotional win in Battleground.
Absolutely, and Anacortes is a team that can really fill it up. They've already scored 100 points twice this season, and so that'll be a good test for River's defense. They've shown that depth all year. A lot of guys who, outside of their primary scoring options, a lot of kind of long, rangy type players. I know Miles Fitzwilson did get hurt, injured his knee, I believe, in that regional round game, so I'm not totally certain on his availability, but even a player like Carter Sharon off the bench has proven to be a capable fill-in as well. So they should be in a good spot going into that game. And while they're the underdogs, it's a great story for this River team who's kind of had a bit of a roller coaster these past 3 years. But those pieces really came together this year. Mark Ganter, their first year head coach, kind of says that this team, they had it all along. He's just kind of the orchestrator and kind of putting all those pieces together. And wow, they fit so well this year.
Well, yeah, and just to kind of set the scene for this round of 12 and the stakes stakes that are there. They're all loser out games, of course. But usually these games end up being pretty well matched, even if the seeding might be a little bit, there might be a little bit of a gap there. These games tend to be pretty competitive, and the stakes couldn't be higher at this point of the season, being that if you win, you guarantee yourself at least 2 more games in either Tacoma or Yakima, or if you lose, you go home, but say you made it to the final site, which is always something to be proud of.
Right. And I think you see with these seedings too, I mean, even in the regional round, maybe like a 9-16 matchup where you think the 9 is like the overwhelming favorite. But if you got to this point in the season, obviously you're there for a reason, and Rivers should go into this game feeling confident. And, especially when you haven't faced a team like that all season, I mean, who knows, anything can happen, and Rivers should be confident. They have a solid resume to back it up. They beat Mark Morris earlier this year, a team that will certainly, I think, be contending for a 2A state championship as well. So yeah, Rivers should feel proud of themselves and feel confident going into this round of 12 game.
Yeah, let's go to the 4A boys, and another team that had a very exciting win in Battleground on Saturday, Skyview. The number 11 seed Storm going against number 6 Federal Way. The winner faces number 5 seed Davis, but Skyview, they got a win over Woodinville in a game where they weren't really, including their leading scorer, Damari Collins, weren't really on offensively, but they found a way. Yeah. And that's what winning teams do. Damari Collins kind of embodied that. Despite being 0 for 10 from 3-point range in that game, he comes up big defensively as Woodinville is trying to work its way for a shot while Skyview's protecting a 1-point lead. He comes up with a steal, gets fouled, hits 2 free throws, and then the Storm hold on, again getting another stop when Woodinville tried to tie the game with a 3-pointer at the end. But Skyview, at this point, it's not about how pretty you win, it's just about winning.
Yeah, classic playoff game, just a defensive slugfest on both sides, and I believe Skyview had a 9-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and slowly Woodinville kind of started to chip away at it, and you're kind of thinking, oh no, is Skyview really potentially gonna lose this? And that final defensive sequence, I mean, Damari Collins to ask to get the assignment of Woodinville's kind of top scoring option and then get that steal and get fouled. I was actually taking photos and kind of saw the progression of him going from celebrating to looking at the scoreboard, and it kind of started to sink in a little bit that if you made those free throws, they were probably gonna hold on for the win. And props again to Skyview, a team that in this current class has not been there before. They last went there in 2020, just before this senior class came into their freshman season. And yeah, their defense, I think, as the season has gone on, has really tightened up. And we've talked a lot about how tough of a non-league schedule they played for themselves early. And I think at this point in the season, you want to kind of see the experience of those games kind of lead to results like this.
Well, in Federal Way, they're going to go against a team that has actually lost, despite being a number 6 seed, they've lost 2 in a row. They lost in the bi-district semifinals to Tahoma. They had already qualified for state, so they opted not to play that 3rd place game. And then they lost to in the regional round to Gonzaga Prep. So obviously Federal Way is going to try to get right in this. But I think it's one of those classic 11-6 matchups where you kind of throw out the seeding because it's whoever kind of plays well and runs their offense, and most importantly, dials down on defense in the Tacoma Dome.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we obviously know Federal Way is kind of that perennial state power. And, as a 6 seed, I think they're pretty dangerous. Their 16-7 record might not totally indicate that, but they play in a tough league, and to lose to a team like Gonzaga Prep. But, Skyview is not just happy that they got to the Tacoma Dome. I mean, even after they won a winner's state game and then advanced to regionals, I mean, they said all along, like, we're going into this thinking we can make a run. And of course, a team's not going to say otherwise, but you really kind of believe it talking to the Storm. I mean, whether their seeding is an 11 or whatever it is, or 12, I mean, it's, they're still a dangerous team no matter what.
Another team that is dangerous, especially if they shoot like they did on Friday, is the Camas boys. Number 13 seed going against number 4 Glacier Peak. But Camas is coming off its best shooting performance of the season. I mean, this is just insane. In the regional round against West Valley of Yakima, in a hostile gym at Davis High School in Yakima, the Papermakers bury 19 3-pointers. I don't remember exactly how many they shot, but they were probably about 19 of 30. I think I remember one of the coaches kind of saying off the top of his head that. So to shoot roughly 19 for 30 from 3-point range in a playoff game is just insane. But yeah, we were talking kind of before this that the way they generated their offense, it wasn't like they were just spraying and praying. And, it wasn't, there's two different ways. If you're going to shoot 33 pointers in a game, there's kind of two different ways you can make that happen. There's one kind of ugly way that you can do it where you just kind of ISO ball with your best shooter and he or she will, try to, get some space and shoot it up and do that over and over and over. And then there's the way the Papermakers kind of generated their offense on Friday. A lot of cross-court passes, a lot of skip passes, a lot of making the extra passes, a lot of ball movement. And what that did is it made a lot of those 30 3-pointers roughly that they shot non-contested 3-pointers. They were wide open looks. And the reason I think they were able to do that so effectively was one of the keys to the game that Tim and I kind of talked about heading into that, in that the Papermakers needed to get multiple shooters involved in the offense early so that that defense didn't just collapse on their top scorer, Beckett Curry. That's exactly what you saw happen in the first quarter against West Valley with Jace Van Voorhees making 3-pointers in that first quarter where Beckett Curry didn't even score. So by the time you got to the second quarter, you had already established that this wasn't going to be a one-player show, and that opened it up for Beckett, who had 13 points in the second quarter. It was, talking to Coach Ryan Josephson after the game, it was to a T the strategy that they had kind of been preaching all year, that we are at our most dangerous when everybody's a threat to score. And that includes sophomore Ethan Harris, a 6'8" forward who hit 8 or 9 3-pointers. If you have that kind of length and that size and you're also draining it from outside, how do you defend that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say too. I mean, when you have potentially 5 guys on the court who can shoot, including your center who stands, I think 6'7" or 6'8", I mean, that makes you a dangerous team. And, I think they learned last year as well at the Tacoma Dome that, shooting might not always travel there, but I think they also have, the experience and kind of know what it takes to when their shots aren't falling to also play that style. I mean, last year it was kind of the Theo McMillan led penetrating and kind of getting better looks close to the basket. And Jace Van Voorhees is very much a player like that, who kind of in that same style of Theo McMillan can kind of create opportunities for teammates as well. So I think, whether or not they have another 19 3-pointer showing at the Tacoma Dome, they've shown that they can play both styles and they have the personnel that can do it.
Well, and in West Valley, they beat a team that outmatched them in the front court when it came to size. Right. Their main, West Valley's main weapon down there is a 6'5", probably 260-pound post, Parker Mills. And he was able to get his position down low early and had a really effective first half. But then they made some adjustments, Camus did, in the second half, and they're like, even if he's getting the ball 10 feet from the basket, that's still too early. We need to double him the moment he touches the ball. And so they held him to 2 points in the third quarter, really shut him down. And then on the offensive side, with Camus being so hot from 3-point range, it didn't matter that West Valley had a size advantage down low because they were just shooting over the defense.
Right. Yeah. That's the perfect kind of recipe, I feel like, for a team like that. So Camus showed that.
All right. So obviously Camus, they're going to go against a Glacier Peak team that, like Federal Way, is also on a 2-game losing streak. But the first of those losses came in their district championship game to number 1 ranked Mount Si. So obviously that's not a bad loss. But then they lost in the regional round against Davis. So Glacier Peak, despite being a 4 seed, coming in on a 2-game skid, looking to get right.
Yeah, and that was a team that Skyview played earlier in the year too, and I think that was a relatively close game. And Glacier Peak has obviously won a lot of those close games this year. So to lose 2 straight going into the Tacoma Dome is not ideal, but obviously their record is still really strong, 22-3 on the season. They're a 4 seed, so they'll be a really dangerous team to play. But Camas has that state level experience now too, so don't count them out.
All right, the next team we're going to talk about, the Seton Catholic boys in the 1A tournament. This, I think, is a setup where the Cougars are looking to really just take that next step. We've talked about over and over how every year for the past 2 or 3 seasons, they've gone a little bit further and done a program first. Last season, it was getting to Yakima for the first time. This year, against number 10 Meridian, the number 7 seed Cougars are going to look to make the quarterfinals for the first time in program history. And they're set up to do it, perhaps. I mean, they had a really tough regional draw where they had to go on the road, a long road trip up to Linden to face number 2 seed Linden Christian, a perennial state contender, one of the toughest draws year in, year out in that tournament. And so Seton lost that game 71-39, but in Meridian, they're going to face a team that, as a number 10 seed, has a 13-11 record. I don't think you should read too much into that record, however, because Meridian has won 4 of its last 5 games. The only one of those losses coming in their district tournament to, of course, Linden Christian.
Right.
So, but I think that's going to be a great matchup. And again, we talked about it last week that that experience that Seton Catholic gained with last year's sophomore class being really the driver of that team going to Yakima. This isn't going to be new for them in the Sun Dome. And I think Seton Catholic, if they win this game Wednesday against Meridian, will be able to look at their state tournament experience and be like, yeah, we did something this year that we can really be proud of.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, they're no longer newbies at the Sun Dome. Last year, they were a number 14 seed, and I think that was just kind of a newfound position for that program, and just to get that experience. Obviously, getting eliminated in that round of 12 game, but now they're on paper a favorite as a number 7 seed, and interestingly enough, too, they actually played a holiday tournament in that same venue in late December, and one of the teams they played, number 1 seed Zilla, is actually the opponent that they would face if they win this quarterfinal game. So they do have a little bit of experience there, even just from a few months ago, and I think that can help too. Obviously, kind of because it's for anybody who's been there, kind of knows it's a little different setup with the 2 courts and in a really big venue, and there's kind of the black curtain in the back too, and your line of sight's a little different than your average high school gym, obviously, but they've been there before now, and it's not new for them anymore.
Well, if you want to talk about the thread in the story of stacking up memories, if Seton can win that Wednesday game and face number 1 Zilla, they're going to get one of the coolest experiences that you see in that Yakima venue. And that Zilla, they bring everybody from that town. It is, when Zilla plays in the state basketball tournament, it is loud, it is packed. Unlike the Tacoma Dome, which has many of the same characteristics that you just described with a more wide open boundary, the Yakima Sun Dome is a little bit more intimate. The stands are a little bit closer, and if Seton has a Thursday game against Zilla, they're going to be looking into a sea of orange and black fans, and it's going to be a great atmosphere that win or lose against the top seeded Leopards. Seton can point to that as we took the next step, and we got to see really the 1A state tournament in its, at its most intense.
It is also worth noting that while that sophomore class, now junior class, got that experience last year, freshman Caden Wilson, the Trico League Player of the Year, is new to this. So this experience for him, obviously he's now played several playoff games and even won a district championship with Seton a couple weeks ago. But, for a freshman to get that experience too, I think is going to be invaluable for them next year.
Yeah, it's all about making memories, and that's what Seton wants to do this week. Let's go to the girls, and perhaps the most compelling Wednesday game in any of the state tournaments for local teams is round number 3 between number 8 Columbia River and number 9 Ridgefield. You say, well, how is it that two Greater St. Helens League teams that have faced off already twice this year in league play get matched against each other in the round of 12? Well, that's just how the seeding broke down. Columbia River was the number 8 seed after the WIA selection committee put them in that spot. That meant they got the unenviable task of going on the road in the regional round to the number 1 seed Ellensburg Bulldogs, prohibitive favorite to win the state title. It went about how you'd expect, River losing 69-25, but we talked about last week, that's kind of the trade-off. Yeah, you're going to be an underdog against a really good team in that regional round, but you're guaranteed the passage to the round of 12, even if you lose. And so that's where Columbia River finds themselves. Number 9 seed Ridgefield, they had to win their way in. They beat number 16 Kingston on Friday evening, thus setting up round number 3 between Columbia River and Ridgefield at 2 p.m. Wednesday. Obviously, the records, Ridgefield's record is better than Columbia River at 21-3 versus River's 18-7, but River has won both matchups against the Spudders this year.
Right. Yeah. And obviously we don't need to get into a whole kind of thing about the way the opening round of state is kind of laid out, but I think it's weird that, as the number 8 seed River kind of goes into this feeling maybe a little bit, I don't want to say unsure, but just after a performance like that, it's kind of a different feeling, obviously, than Ridgefield, who's kind of rolling in off of a big win off of Kingston. But that being said, River should have plenty of confidence in this matchup, knowing that they beat Ridgefield twice already this season. That latter game in particular, when they had to go into Ridgefield in a loud gym and, really a back and forth game that they were able to win on the strength of their 3-point shooting with the likes of Emma Niguez and Gracie Glavin and Peyton Dukes and company. But at the same time, I think Ridgefield now, after getting that winner to state game win over Washougal, winning this past weekend and being able to go now back to state for the first time since 2007, they're in a really good spot. And for both these teams, I mean, they haven't done this in quite some time, so it's a new experience for both of them. But obviously the opponent is familiar, and that should be a really fun game. Yeah,
circling back to River really quick, I think the easy thing to say coming off a loss against an elite team like Ellensburg is just flush it.
Yeah.
But I don't think they should do that. I think they should say, hey, we learned stuff. We learned what the toughest team, we actually saw how tough the competition is going to be, and every team not named Ellensburg is probably not going to be as tough. We've had the experience now of traveling to Central Washington. Of course, Ellensburg and Yakima separated by about 30 miles. Yep. The game I think that Columbia River girls, in addition to their 2 wins over Ridgefield, can really look to is the district championship game against WF West, which they were competitive in. WF West being a number 3 seed, kind of being viewed along with Linden as the kind of group that's right below Ellensburg as far as the tiers of competition in the 2A girls state tournament.
Yeah, and I think T. Anderson, their head coach, is somebody who they're always learning from a loss, and if they get an experience like they did against Ellensburg, it's right back to film the next day. And I remember a loss earlier this season to Hudson's Bay was kind of an eye-opening one for them, and then they follow that up with their first win against Ridgefield and then beat them again later in the regular season. So certainly I'm sure they will learn some valuable lessons from that loss to Ellensburg. And again, I mean, just having that in the back of your mind that you've played this team twice before, you've won those games, you know what it takes. River should feel confident, and then on the flip side of that, Ridgefield I think is gaining confidence as the season has gone on. And while we've talked about maybe they didn't always get the biggest kind of out of league tests at this point in the season, playing teams like WF West and even Kingston this last weekend. They should be ready to go as well.
Definitely. So the fact that River versus Ridgefield go head to head in the round of 12 guarantees that we'll have a 2A GSHL girls team in the state quarterfinals. We'll also have a 4A girls Greater St. Helens league team in the quarterfinals by way of number 1 seed Camas, which took care of business on Saturday in the number 1 versus number 8 seed regional round matchup, beating Gonzaga Prep, kind of overcoming a slow first half to pull away and really, dominate, especially on defense, winning 53-31. Camas has now won 11 in a row. They have booked passage through to the quarterfinals, and they will await either number 7 Tahoma or number 10 Bellarmine Prep. I think that, obviously Camas will play whoever is in front of them. I don't think they really have a preference in that matchup because, that Camas beat Bellarmine 63-44 in the bi-district tournament. Yeah. That came one game after the Lions beat Tahoma 57-53. So Bellarmine and Tahoma are pretty even. Camas is going to be a favorite, but this really starts the final stretch that Camas has been building for, not just this year, but really for several years as this group of seniors has played together and kind of envisioned what way they want to end their high school careers.
Right. And I mean, they're here where they want to be, but that Gonzaga Prep game, the first half in particular, I think kind of was probably a good lesson for them going into the state tournament. I mean, it was kind of a physical, the type of game that Camas just wasn't quite initially getting on track offensively. And I know Riley Sands had a big first half. I think she scored 15 of Camas's 24 points, but they were frank about the fact afterwards that, we can't afford to do that, particularly, against some of those other top teams, a team like Sumner that they had a really tough battle with in the bi-district semis, and even maybe a Kamiakin or a Woodinville, who's the number 2 seed. So, they're learning from that already. And I think, going into Thursday's quarterfinal, I mean, yeah, like you said, they played Bellarmine already. They know what it takes. And then Tahoma last year was a team that they faced in that first round of state. So familiar opponents. And now it's really just about Camas taking care of business and this cross-country season they had already. This is what they did to prepare them for this. And now it's time to see them, get tested.
Well, that was always the plan, was to stack the schedule with those elite national level programs around the holiday season. But the challenge that brought up was now once you're done with the tournaments around Christmas and then some tough games, a second game against Clackamas in early January, then you have a league season where, aside from 2 games against Union, which Camas ended up winning pretty handily, you weren't really going to be tested for the better part of kind of 6 weeks almost.
Right.
And so it was all about how can we, the tenor that or the tempo and the mood and the intensity that we had to play with against those elite teams during the holidays. Can we bottle that up, put it on ice, and then crack it open when it comes time for the bi-district and the state playoffs here in late February, early March?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But I think the good part, too, about those early season tournaments is it kind of simulates that same, 3 games in 3 days type thing. So they know kind of how to deal with that. And they've also kind of had those moments in the season of these past 2 months in particular where maybe they weren't playing a ton of games, but still got some really quality practice time in. And, every time they play a game, talking to them after the Bellarmine Prep game up at bi-districts or even this last weekend against Gonzaga Prep, they're always happy to get these tests. It's never kind of a bad thing or they're lamenting, their play necessarily. It's no, we want these tests because this is going to get us to our ultimate goal. So they're locked in at this point and they're ready to go.
Yeah. 3 games away. That they take care of business in the quarterfinals. We'll see who they get in the semifinals and beyond. But that's going to be an interesting storyline to follow. You'll be up in Tacoma to see that.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
All right. Just a couple of teams we want to mention. Shout out to the Columbia Adventist Kodiaks in the 1B boys tournament. Despite being a number 16 seed, they have won loser out games against Mount Vernon Christian and Tulare heritage, so that the Kodiaks are now headed to Spokane for the round of 12 Wednesday against Nacelle. And so a big tip of the cap to the Kodiaks, a big underdog story there, winning as the number 16 seed, getting hot. And even though they might be, one of the smaller schools in Southwest Washington, they have a history of playing some pretty good basketball, making it to the state tournament. And so definitely a tip of the cap to the Kodiaks.
Survive in advance.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And also, I will be in Yakima this week. I can't wait to see how the Southwest Washington teams do there, including the Mark Morris boys, who they saw a 14-game win streak come to an end in the regional round of the state tournament, losing 58-48 to number 3 North Kitsap. But the number 6 Monarchs are dangerous. Obviously, they have one of the best players in Southwest Washington, Braden Olson. They are trying to send longtime head coach Bill Backamus out into retirement with a state title. And, the Monarchs just have made a habit of showing up when it matters in Yakima. And so they'll start the number 6 seed against number 11 Bremerton, with the winner facing number 4 Renton. I'll be very excited to see if the Monarchs catch fire this week.
The only unfortunate thing is because Bremerton beat R.A. Long, we were denied a third straight game between R.A. Long and Mark Morris, the crosstown rivals. But it's going to be exciting to follow Mark Morris. And even just last season, they were in the state championship game. And they what a story that would be if Bill Backamus can make a run in his final trip to the Yakima Valley Sundome.
Well, you can follow it all week on 360preps.com. Follow us on all our social channels at 360preps. We'll be having updates from Yakima, from myself, from you and Meg Wachnick up in Tacoma. It's going to be a great week of basketball. It's one of my favorite weeks of the high school sports season. I can't wait to break it down afterwards, but we got y'all primed with this special early edition of Varsity 360 today. We will see you next week, and best of luck to all the teams in Tacoma, Yakima, and Spokane this week.